Welcome to the Fallout. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. We got Nate Bauer, Sean Fitz here on our Tuesday show to talk about Penn State losing to winless UCLA in a shocker, a stunning game. And we're not going to start there today. We are going to start with what I think everyone is really frothy about, which is James Franklin's press conference yesterday. Was he conciliatory enough? Did he take enough accountability? How do you take accountability in a press conference where all you can say is, I take accountability? All those things coming up on the show today. And of course, Penn State UCLA, we will recap the show. There's going to be a lot of conversation. There's going to be a lot of emotion all over the place because it's just spilling out of everybody in the Penn State ecosphere. So let's get to doing that. Nate Bauer, Sean Fitz. Fitz, I'm going to start with you because once we get to Nate, I feel like we're going to get going on the show. So how are you doing today? And what have you been thinking about? What's your now long-term reaction to that loss to UCLA and everything that's happened since? How you been processing all of this?
Oh, it's terrible. I mean, there's no getting around it. Like, there's no way to look at this objectively and say that, maybe they could have done this, maybe they could have. I mean, you're going across the country to an 0-4 team that was very, very bad. Now, and again, and nobody likes to hear giving them credit, but that UCLA team looked completely different than any UCLA team that was on tape to that point. But it's still, and I've had this conversation with Nate, does not really matter. Like, that's
how dare you?
Okay. No, I mean, I'm just here as a runway for you. So apparently that's the case. But yeah, there's no getting around it. Worst loss of James Franklin's Penn State tenure. Worst loss in a long, long time for Penn State as a program. And it's just like, how do you get past that? And how do you look at the effort that was given and the when I say effort, it's
the end product.
It's everything. Yeah, it's everything. It's coaches, players, all that kind of stuff. And it's just it's so hard to wrap your head around. And I know you guys were on right after the game the other day and probably cooled down a little bit, but like this, a lot of times we go back and look at how these games play out on tape and it doesn't look as bad. And just going back over it, yeah, there's some things that weren't as technically bad as we thought it was, but it's still really, really bad, really bad.
Yeah. Just quickly here, Robo Joey says it's been something different on every play is a really bad answer. If you've ever watched football, like the coaches film and study, that's how it works. That is how offense in college football works. So to say that is not like that's a bad answer. That is the answer to football. And why I've said on this show for years, people think that just run the ball is the answer to fix everything in football. Run blocking is really, really hard. And every offensive lineman makes mistakes. In the NFL, in high school, in college, it's really hard to stop somebody else who's about the same size as you from going in a direction they don't want to go. So just we're already there. We're already into it. But Nate, kick us off. I want to get your thoughts here since we talked last on the post-game show. I gave my thoughts on a Monday video about the situation, the state of things. You are, I think, our most down the middle sort of person in terms of I will emotionally react to things because emotion is around. You are a very staunch person of here's the situation, here's what's going on. So what's the situation? What's going on?
I feel like the catcher in The Sandlot when they have to go get the ball.
You kind of look like the catcher from The Sandlot, but that's
maybe
another thing.
Maybe when they have to get the ball from the dog and he's got all the equipment on and he's ready to get. I have. It's like two trains of thought. Neither one being satisfactory to what anybody wants to hear. You just can't lose that game. Not a team like this cannot lose that game. Penn State had this. I don't know if I really want to say this. Similar letdowns last year that they won the game. I think in terms of actual performances, I think there were games that Penn State came out slow last year. Or Penn State, I mean, they played catch up at Southern Cal. They almost lost that game.
Bowling Green. I mean,
Bowling Green. Just I guess to me, it kind of stands out as hey, the difference.
UCLA last year actually was another good one where it was a very slow game against a team that wasn't great last year.
It's just the result, and so you have to condemn the result, and I will. I mean, right, for a team that had the aspirations that Penn State did this season, for Penn State to lose that game, no matter how it looked, for Penn State to lose that game is unacceptable, right? Right, like for Penn State, for the administration, athletic department, football program, players, their families, coaches, all of it. It, like, the whole thing, unacceptable, especially James Franklin. But absolutely, it's his ship, it's his show. I watched the game on Saturday, and again, this is where but comes in and everybody gets upset about it. Nico had a really good game.
Yeah.
Penn State not having Tony Rojas mattered. Penn State's failure to execute in critical situations on defense and offense really mattered, right? Like, legitimately, you talk about big plays, right? And the reality is every game or every play is a big play in a game based on what the outcome is. And when Penn State got into critical situations, either being ready to stop UCLA's offense or needing to convert a third down or a fourth down in the biggest moments, Penn State failed. And that they're like, everyone wants right now, to me, I just see this. There has to be something, right? Like, there has to be something more than just failure. And I'm not convinced that there is. I think they failed. Right? Like, I think that's what it was.
And the genesis of that failure, if we take that delta and follow it back up the river to where the headstream is of that failure, that's where everyone wants to know. What's the source? Where do we go to find the well of failure? And everyone wants to put it somewhere. And most people want to put it on head coach James Franklin,
which is
who
fine.
Spoke to the media yesterday about all of this stuff. And yeah, and that's I mean, we had 26 minutes of that, right? Yesterday, we had 26 minutes of basically that thought, it seems. Is that, how would you characterize it differently, Nate?
Yeah, no, I think so. I think the word responsibility was used 9 times in 30 minutes, right? Accountability and like all of it. It doesn't matter what is said at this point. There are befores and afters, and the reality for his future with the program's future this season, all of it is these two things happened. They happened. They are losses. Penn State was number 2 at one point in the rankings this season. They are now unranked.
Yep.
For the trajectory of the program, how it proceeds from here is critical. That's it. And it cannot be the same way it was before the season even got started, where I have said this before, I'll say it again. I don't know if it was the expectation of players and coaches seeping in, family members seeping in, fans seeping in, but whether it was the expectation or just the desire, this idea that everyone would wake up and it would be the semifinal of the next year's playoff is not real. You have to play the game, and they have failed in those endeavors so far this season.
Fitz, was Penn State a victim of success in winning the offseason, of getting 3 transfer portal wide receivers and then elevating the expectation of a team? It's like, well, they're bringing everybody back, and it seems like they finally addressed all their needs. Did they actually address all their needs? And like, I guess the proof is on this other side, but I guess, do you think what happened here of Penn State being number 2 because of off-season perception wins?
Yes. Not so much the transfer portal wins, but the retention. like winning the offseason there. You liken it to winning free agency or something like that in the NFL, and it doesn't always transfer. As a Washington fan, I can tell you that for the last 30 years. But I think that had a lot to do with it. You look at the performance, and some of this is really mind-boggling, especially when I keep going back to the offensive line, who did some really nice things in the playoff beyond, and people want to say that SMU and Boise State don't count, whatever. But beyond that, they did some really nice things at the end of the year against Oregon, against Notre Dame, etc., and put themselves in a position to vault into 2025 and simply haven't done it. And I think that's kind of starting with the recipe for, and this is something we said all offseason, we were wrong on this, and the recipe for that was 2023 Michigan, 2024 Ohio State, where you get these older guys, you get these guys that can, brawl with anybody up front, especially in the offensive side. We knew they had some holes to fix on the defensive line, and they haven't come along yet. And now you find yourself in a position where that just hasn't rolled over. And I think that's kind of where you see that fall off there. And hey, Drew is always been what Drew is, and that's a tough thing to overcome. I mean, Drew was very low on the list of the reasons that they lost to USC, but you still have everything that sort of comes around at its own pace. So yes, I do believe, and I thought about that the other day, is like, yes, Penn State won the offseason, and that's not the crown that you're looking to take. But I think it was more retention than anything than receivers. Receivers have been a net, I don't know, they're the same as last year. Just kind of looking at some of the plays that they've made and the plays that they haven't made. Has that been an issue? I think the definite net negative with tight end, even though, and I kind of wrote this down with Saturday, is that Penn State's tight ends are just playing fine. And given where the standard is for that position, given how great Tyler Warren was, given how you see Brenton Strange in the NFL, Theo Johnson in the NFL just finds not cutting it with what they're doing there, blocking and receiving. So like you're finding yourself in a situation where those expectations, I'll admittedly, we said this all off season as well. Like there's a lot of talent in this football team. It's too talented to be 3-2. And it's just kind of how I come back around to it.
And that is a great transition. You mentioned, those veterans returning. Let's get to between the lines. And the thing that I've been most interested in this year to start, I want to get your opinion on what James Franklin said here in just 1 second, but I'm breaking my own rules. Here's the intro.
They have both gotten reps with ones.
Okay, so James Franklin has said that the offense is inconsistent. I wrote about this. Everyone saw this. We talked about this on the postgame show. The tackling against UCLA was the worst it's been in a very long time. It was very hard to watch guys miss tackles when in position. So there is this level of inconsistent, and James Franklin was pressed on that to say, what's the reason for those things? Those are effects, is how it was phrased. Here's what he had to answer as to what's the reason for that?
First of all, I think the first thing is there's been obviously some adjustments to what we're doing on defense and getting our guys to play confident within the system is still a work in progress. I don't think that's a question. We're not playing as fast and as aggressive as we have in the past on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, that's probably where those question marks probably are as much as anything, because year two with Andy, and then also so many returning players on the offensive side of the ball, and we've been inconsistent. I know that's that was part of your question, is not using that word, but if I had the answer, I would give it to you right now. But that's what we're working through every single day, is finding ways to be more consistent.
And to go back to the point earlier that we started the show with, of there's just a mistake on every play by the offensive line, and that's kind of how offensive line works. You also do have mostly seniors up there. And so there is this question of, why are they making these mistakes when the blueprint, as Fitz pointed out, is 23 Michigan, 24 Ohio State, of bringing back seniors who don't make mistakes, and maybe they're not NFL talent, but they're just really good college football players. They have not been really good college football players so far. So what is the source of this, Fitz? Like, I know I know he just said, like, I don't know, but this is the question, and I guess I want to talk through this with you guys of, like, What do you think of this particular situation, of that disconnect, not just from what we saw from last year, but the kind of crater that has created of consistency on offense specifically that is kind of leaking over into the defense at this point?
Yeah, I mean it's tough to play a game like they did against Oregon, where the defense did what they could to stay in the game, and we have admittedly said it was not a great defensive performance despite the 17 points on the board in overtime. Like, that's kind of how this has played out, and then all of a sudden you flip it back on the other side, and it's like, okay, now the defense has to, or excuse me, now the offense is somewhat carrying its weight, and the defense has to flip around and stay on its toes, and again, you're looking back at one injury changing the entire dynamic of what should be a pretty good defense, and that is a difficult thing to wrap your head around. It's also a very difficult thing if you listen to James yesterday. One of the things that he said that actually kind of did matter was that it wasn't so much schematically as it was mistakes. You mentioned the missed tackling and things of that nature. That might be scarier. Like, that might be an issue. Like, of the two, you'd rather have you would rather maybe have the schematic mistakes where you have to make up with athleticism.
Yeah.
You flip that around and it's not great. So, like, I think that is what I'm looking at with this defense. Like, yes, you knew that Tony's injury would change things, but to completely morph this defense into something that just couldn't stand on its own. And I think a lot of it started up front. You look at the way the Penn State was kind of handled up front, with all four of their guys, even the stars on the edge there. That's unsettling if you're Penn State, because that's how you've built your program. That's how you built the last 5 years, is sort of, I don't want to say balling up, but like figuring out how to manipulate offensive fronts and end up with tackles for loss. And I think they had 8 the other day, but still, nobody would confuse that for a good performance or anything remotely close to a good performance. So I think that is what's unsettling there, is like, when you have, you're not going to call every play right, as Jim Knowles, kind of showed on Saturday. You're not going to call every play right, but if you can't call enough right and your guys also don't execute, oh boy, you're toast. And that's what we saw on Saturday.
Nate, what do you think? What do you think about the same idea of what's the source of this problem? Any ideas?
Yeah, I think that there is a little bit of people kidding themselves, maybe. I'm not sure exactly how to frame it, but ignoring the things, right? Look, the stuff Franklin said yesterday is the same stuff he said over the bye week, right? So after the first 3 performances, specifically about the defense, right? So the defense had issues in the first place. Like, he was pounding the table, need to play faster, need to play more confidently. That is, you can go back and check the tape, said it every week of the beginning of the season. Then they play Oregon and could not get off the field on 3rd or 4th down. Consistently, right? So all of these issues already existed for this defense before Rojas went down.
Right.
So it's not saying Rojas is the reason that they played poorly defensively. It's part of the reason, but it's not the reason. The reason is compounding issues, right? You already have this environment where running quarterbacks, right?
Yeah.
What FIU's kid did. Like, there were already these signs of inefficiency, ineffectiveness. It's not saying that they're completely inept and can't play football or won't recover. It is simply saying there was a framework and a groundwork that was acknowledged as a hurdle for Penn State to clear defensively as the season progressed. That I think there were signs of making progress, but ultimately those signs of making progress were not enough, obviously, compounded with Rojas getting hurt, to make up for a quarterback who, yes, was terrible. I 100% Right? Like all of these things that people are complaining about are absolutely valid. UCLA was bad at playing football offensively for the first 4 games of the season. Yeah. Absolutely. They were okay on Saturday.
No, that was a good game plan. So they finally, I'm assuming this is just some context clues here. They finally realized they need to play and leverage to the strengths of their team, not to the strengths of what they wanted to be. Deshaun Foster, I kind of got the sense that they were trying to run like an NFL style, a pro style, I know that's a trigger word, offense, where there were a lot of deep route concepts, a lot of long developing. They wanted to use Iamalava's arm strength as an advantage, and they stopped doing that. They started throwing quick game, short passes, running the ball, and putting Penn State in a position that Oregon created this template, and probably even maybe FIU created the template of stay on the field and play underneath the coverage of Jim Knowles' defense. Run the ball as effectively as you can, convert third and short, and nickel and dime your way down the field. So Penn State has adapted and reacted to that. But when you do that, the way to take away quick game is to run man coverage. When you run man coverage, you have the opportunity for the offense to throw balls over the head of the corners. They hit 2 shot plays. And then the quarterback can break contain and run when nobody's eyes are on him. So there is the fair thing to say, there was no spy until late in the game. That is fair. Penn State was trying to play zone. That was a part of their game plan. I don't think they intended to play so much man coverage, but they had to, and those adaptations they made in the game sort of played into what UCLA wanted. But it was a thing they had to do based on the way that short passing game was working, because that is a 5-star quarterback with 5-star traits. So he can get the ball to any part of the field accurately when he wants to, and they started to take advantage of that. And so, yeah, to give UCLA their proper credit in the situation, they were not the same offense that we saw the first 4 weeks, and that does play into this game.
And also, nobody wants to hear it, and I get it. Like I completely get it. When you look at the talent, when you look at what's out there, absolutely. Like that is not the definition of that game. And I think it's worth saying both of those things. Like that was something different. But like, Penn State as a superior, talented team, which I still believe they were. Like,
yes.
Then like I'm rarely the sack up and deal with it guy, but like that's a situation where it's kind of like that. So
no, that's absolutely fair. Like it is fair to say, and I said this at some point, it's fair to say for the first quarter, Penn State's allowed to be surprised by a completely new game plan. After that, like that's the point, is now you've got to pivot and find a better opportunity for your offense, and to get it by getting your defense off the field. Like your defense has to get off the field. Nate, you have thoughts here.
Well, no, they kind of did that, right? Defensively, the second half was better than it was in the first half. I don't think there's really any argument to that. What I am struck by is, and I think you just said it in a variation of this, but look at Oregon's drive chart and look at UCLA's drive chart, and the similarities of, yes, the third downs being an issue, but also double-digit play drives going 75 yards. Like most teams that Penn State has played, and this is me truly riffing, but over the last 5 years, I mean, I cannot count that many offenses that have been able to do that with any type of consistency, and that's exactly what's happening over to this defense. This defense is being systemically marched down the field on, taken advantage of once third downs happen, because the pass rush is not as effective as it needs to be.
Yeah.
They're losing their lanes. And I mean, I think there's also some similarities in how Drew and Nico both had their most effectiveness on Saturday.
Yeah.
Right. In terms of,
it was a duel of quarterbacks,
very college
running against cover one. Yep.
So that's a problem. Like that's a huge problem for Penn State moving forward. Is anybody who knows that they don't have to beat Penn State with chunk plays or beat Penn State by getting it all in one shot, I'm not seeing where this stops for Penn State. Like I don't know. And I mean that's honestly a question for you, but
well, Nate, there's a point where this conversation needs to stop because we need to talk about beer. 25 minutes in, we need to have a pause, a reset, and a refresh. And everyone in the chat, take a deep breath. I understand everyone here is to rage bomb the chat and talk about how everything's terrible and everyone's terrible. But let's talk about some beer. Let's all agree that beer is great. And Fitz can tell us about Anti-Fragile Brewing Company in downtown State College, which has some of the best beer in this town.
John, the owner of Anti-Fragile, Nate and I were in there on Friday afternoon, and we were talking Penn State football. He was worried, and we were like, it's UCLA. It's fine. Like, and I don't know how many people I told that to last week, but that's kind of where he was at. And John, you were right. John's right about beer too, because Anti-Fragile is the best beer in State College. Wonderful atmosphere in there on Friday afternoon, even though it was an away game. Even better, this past or 2 weekends ago for Oregon, one of their best weekend ever. It was awesome to see it packed, and it was awesome to see the influence, because he keeps saying, and the bartenders keep saying that a lot of people show up saying they were sent by the Blue White Illustrated podcast, and we really appreciate that, because we really appreciate their support, and we really appreciate you guys trusting us to tell you what is good, and beer is good, we think. So continue to support them on East Calder Way. It's still wonderful outside, at least for the next couple of hours until it starts raining and the temperature drops a couple of degrees. So go get yourself a cheesesteak, go have a beer outside in early October. It's a wonderful, wonderful time in State College, and Anti-Fragile has been a wonderful, wonderful addition to the downtown scene since they arrived in April of 2022. Again, we support them, they support us, and I think both love what the other one does, and I think that is an appreciation you don't get everywhere. So definitely check it out. I think that game weekends are wonderful. I know they sold out of cheesesteaks once again this weekend, so it's just it's going well for them, and they continue to do wonderful things, and we appreciate the support not only from them but from our readers and listeners that also patronize that business as well.
If I could just lend a personal anecdote, if you're a Penn State fan and you want to just forget everything for a certain block of time, you can do that with their collaboration with Dancing Gnome. Firsthand.
Can we go back over that story? Because you didn't want to drink a collab. You didn't want the collab. You wanted the number one that you always got. And I said, try this. And you tried it, and it's an 8% double IPA, and it is really tasty. And when I left Nate, because I had to go pick up my kids,
there was no reason for me to stay
off the bus. Nate was still there, entertaining everyone. He had the iPad playing music and everything like that. It was a great little Friday afternoon for Nate.
I mean, awesome. It was really good. It was really good. I don't remember much of the date I had with my wife, but I'm sure it was great.
One other side note, as always, thanks to Anti-Fragile for being a sponsor here on the show. We also have something cool to share with you. I want to show you this because these are really nice. I'm wearing my Roback today, and they are officially restocked with their game day collection for Penn State. So it's homecoming weekend. If you want some new, fresh swag, the Roback collection looks really good. So these are going to look good on you in the stadium, at your tailgate, all that stuff, and everyone loves the Roback stuff. Having gotten this, I understand. Like, ooh, this is some really nice performance apparel. So check them out. This is not the Penn State stuff because they were sold out. Unfortunately, I waited too long. But you can use our promo code. So this is the great part is use code PSU20. That's PSU20 to get 20% off from their game day collection. So appreciate them for also being a sponsor here on the show. Let's get to we've kind of talked about this. And I just want to play this. Like, it's not that when a team loses to UCLA, like Penn State did, where they were ranked, I've gotten multiple questions about, like, is the defense even trying? Are they all checked out? How can they not try? Having watched this team in depth and watched that game 3 times, effort is not the problem. And James Franklin was asked, are you worried about losing your locker room? And he said, in terms of that is not what he's seen from the film.
Yeah, this is a resilient group. I think when you watch the game, Obviously, we have 2 losses, but there's no signs of that on tape. Our guys battled and played really hard. We didn't always play smart, but we battled. We had a chance to win both of those games when maybe there was times where that did not look like it was the case. 2 weeks ago, we give up 2 touchdowns back to back, and it looks like, we're in a tough situation. We battle back and go to overtime. Not enough to win the game, and ultimately that's all that matters. But specific to your question, we did the same thing last week. Is there hurt in the locker room? Yes, no doubt about it. Was there hurt on Sunday? Yeah, no doubt about it, and there should be. But we got a strong group. We got a resilient group. We got a bunch of leaders that have been through adversity in their past. So no, I don't have those concerns right now. But
now, right there, he says right now. So that's watching what happened against UCLA. That's what happened in the game in the loss. What about going forward? And I'm going to ask a couple questions on the front end of this. I'll re-ask them at the end. What does the pressure of this loss and all the stuff we're doing here, all of the outside noise? I was at Wegmans yesterday sitting outside, and someone was playing a clip of Stephen A. Smith banging on about James Franklin and the loss. Like, it has gotten to a level of national pressure that is, it's hard to keep all that out of the submarine, I guess is what I'm saying. So James Franklin was asked how those conversations about accountability, responsibility, the move forward, how are those going inside the Lash building?
Yeah, I think the first thing is stick together, because I think what is human nature is to point in other people's direction, and making sure that as a staff that we're not doing that we're all starting with ourselves and our responsibilities and our side of the ball. I've been places when times get tough, the defense is pointing fingers at the offense, or the offense is pointing fingers at the defense or special teams, and we're not going to do that. So it's everybody owning their responsibility in this, staying as positive as we can, not spending energy on the things that don't help us get better.
Fitz, how realistic is that? To tune out the noise, to tune out the chat, to tune out social media, to tune it all out and just focus on getting better at football right now with all the noise going on? How possible do you think that is?
You can try. It's not going to happen. Like, I mean, you look at how much these players are surrounded on social media, just, and it used to be you would have to go somewhere for that kind of stuff. And now it just comes to you, especially on Instagram. So like, you're looking at the criticisms, and you're looking at, everybody talking about James Franklin. Hey, criticism is absolutely warranted. I don't think that's an issue. Or like, I don't think it's been overkill or anything like that. Now it is leaning into some of the same stuff that we saw, for the last 5 years. But like, I think that's kind of hit play. It's kind of like it's like a giant press conference, right? It's like all these things are predetermined. You come out with all these different answers. You're going to hear one thing, your buddy's going to hear the other thing. It's all, it's all around us. And as players, yes, you can try to tune it out. It ain't happening. Like, it's not a situation where he's probably not going to read my 2,500 words after the game, or the players are not going to read my 2,500 words after the game. A lot of people did, a lot of people didn't. But it's one of those things where you can't miss it now. Like, it's not a situation where you have to open a newspaper to read about this stuff.
Does that affect performance, do you think? And this is the part that I don't know, is like, obviously it will affect psyche and the person's view of their own world, but does it affect the actual performance when you're at practice, when you're in the game? And that's the part where I think James Franklin is talking about tuning out all the noise and the distraction from the focus of getting better. And I just don't know how that, I don't know if that's, how does that work?
You can tell yourself that you're tuning it out, like, but these are human beings still. Like, this is the human psyche of like, everybody has, to an extent, some sort of imposter syndrome, right? Like, you hear one thing and then you're just like, you dwell on it, and you can tell yourself, all right, I'm over it. And then all of a sudden you wake up in the middle of the night, you're like, oh shit, that guy said something. And I don't think it's that cut and dry, but it's going to be something that it probably leads to, and it looks like how Penn State's playing, right? Playing not to make mistakes. You
Yeah.
don't go that extra step because you think it's going to make you make the wrong decision or look bad in the process. And I think that is where it comes down to it. And that eats into execution, which is the crux of this entire 5-week stretch, 6-week stretch, or whatever it is.
Yeah. Stephen Light here says this is an entertainment business. If the financial losses exceed Franklin's termination costs, then he is gone. Until then, all is pain. Greg Fischel's YouTube channel says, a friend of mine has defended Franklin in that he beats teams he's supposed to beat and loses to the teams he's supposed to lose to. So much for that argument. And yeah, that's we're in a new era of the modern James Franklin experience where they have not lost to unranked teams or teams they're not supposed to, air quotes, beat. And now they have, which is why we're having this show talking about these things as opposed to, the X's and O's and the game on Saturday. Nate, what's your reaction to James Franklin's last comment there about tuning out all the noise, not pointing figures, not fracturing instead of coming together and becoming even stronger under the pressure?
Yeah, I think it's hard in the game to not have a sense of here we go again, right? I think if you look at the commonalities of this season, the sample size is large enough to say they have not played well in the first half of games frequently. Almost all of them. And so why is that? I don't know. The game, right? Like
I don't know.
The game plan execution. Obviously, they got jumped on Saturday, right? Just not ready. And again, like execution errors, play calling errors, you name it. I mean, it just the whole sentiment of like his halftime interview before Franklin went into the halftime locker room of like, okay, right? Like, just relax, not relax, but you get the idea, right? Like, this game is not over. Just got to settle down is, I think, indicative of where this group is in terms of just not coming out sharp, really, on either side of the ball.
Yeah.
I do think that it's interesting the submarine and that conversation and being able to tune it out. Zariah Fisher did a post-practice interview with us with reporters last week on Wednesday, and I said something because I see it, right. I have Instagram, and you got the reels, and you're scrolling, and lo and behold, a lot of the ones that come up for me are Penn State football centric, right? Mm-hmm. How do they know? Right? Zariah was like, yeah, it's not that. It's your family. It's your friends, right? Because they, and this is something that James Franklin has actually talked about this year, is everyone has the human nature tendency to protect the people around them. And so the tendency and the habit is for your friends and family to say, man, you played great. It's really too bad that your teammates didn't.
Yeah.
It's everybody else's fault.
Mm-hmm.
And that, when that seeps in, right, it's Drew's fault. It's Nick's fault. It's just the offensive line. It's just Andy Kotelnicki. It's just Zane Durant, right? I mean, the options here are numerous for who can be the boogeyman, not just among fans. It can be among players, right? That if this guy was holding up his end of the bargain, the results would not be what they are. The performances would not be what they are. That is, I think, a big part of the psychology that Franklin is going to have to fight, especially now, especially moving forward, because there's just so much wrapped up into this. And the biggest problem with that is, how are you going to ask 125 guys to not rely and have the sounding boards of the people that are closest to them in their lives through this difficult stretch. That is a hard ask. That is a hard ask. Like, that's who you turn to first. But the reality for this Penn State team this year is that they very quickly have to get to a point, whether they've done it in the past and need to continue it, or whether they haven't done it and need to get there, of leaning on each other, right? Trusting each other and playing with that spirit where it is not the end of the world when the offense goes three and out. It is not the end of the world when the defense gets torched. right? Like they've got to find that and be able to play I mean, what's a word that we haven't heard in a while? Complementary football.
You said the words. I was going to say it. Yeah, that's a great one. Let's talk about uncomplimentary football, which is what we got Penn State UCLA entering the bizarro zone where Penn State loses to unranked UCLA in a way that I think was shocking to everyone, especially the way it started with UCLA marching down the field, then the onside kick, then the field goal, and then a lot of the situations and things that happened throughout the game. Nate, I know you got to get going here soon, so pick your favorite 2 conversation points you want to get to, offense or defense, and we'll start with those so that you can get the main things that we haven't discussed yet, because we discussed the defense, I think, pretty extensively earlier in the show. What stood out to you about this performance that led to to what happened?
Pass. I was looking at the chat. The chat. Pass.
Nate, what do you want to talk about? I'm assuming these were your notes, or are these your notes, Fitz?
No, I wrote some notes down, and I was also somebody mentioned Mel Tucker in the chat, and I was like, man, I forgot all about that guy. So like that, the shiny
that is distracting.
Was Mel
Honestly,
Tucker.
That's fair. Totally fair. That's very distracting. All right, so Fitz, give us some jumping off points of what you want to talk about. Let's discuss the offense in this game, which I know is kind of a sidecar to the conversation, but it is also, I think, relevant to how the first half played out and some of the most critical points in the game. So where do you want to start with the offense in this game?
Yeah, that complimentary football note, I mean, that's what it was, right? I mean, 3 possessions in the first half, not going to get it done. Justin Lustig's got to be prepared for anything, right? Like that is a team. I mean, if you're drawing up a team that is desperate enough to do anything, like to have your guys just turn and run, and that's on Dejoun Lane too. Not great. Now you can get over that. They held them to a field goal, get back and kick back, but you're giving up possessions on the road, which regardless of the team that you're playing, even if it's an 0-4 team, you've proven that you can't waste opportunities at possessions, let alone possessions. And then they wasted a possession the next time they had, or not the next time, but I guess they scored the next time they had the ball. But then after that, Kyron Hudson has a drop, and it's just that waterfall just continues to get stronger and stronger. And when you're playing in a situation that is going to lead you to, I don't know, maybe the red herring of the weekend with the halftime, or just before the halftime, the clock management, which wasn't good, but also the expectation of execution. Was that they would score with little time left on the clock, and they didn't. And that's kind of where you find yourself in that situation. Nate, I know you battled hard on this one, especially since they did it, 4 weeks ago, was scoring with little time left on the clock. And then they still gave UCLA some time to kick a field goal. So I think that's probably the shiny thing that we're probably talking about the most, that wasn't the big issue. And it still wasn't great. I mean, I'm not glossing over it or anything like that, but like, you're looking at a situation where that offense did not maximize its opportunity, and it didn't have enough opportunities, because of its defense. So that's kind of where I'm looking with that. And again, execution errors, especially up front. Flash forward to that last drive, and again, we're looking probably at the wrong thing, saying that Nick was at the second down handoff to Nick Singleton. When you're saying that should have been Katron Allen. And I absolutely agree. Katron Allen needs to be carrying the ball more. Like I'm on that team. Like I've been on that warpath for a while. Nick can still provide something to your offense, but Katron is doing it. Katron's running into Nick Dawkins' ass too. Like that is how that works when your offensive line gets completely stuffed and you've got nowhere to go. Now, Katron usually does a little bit better and makes a little bit more out of it, but at the same time, there are fundamental issues far beyond individual performance that we're seeing just kind of play out and flesh itself out, and then it'll ultimately doom them, because again, that's a game they usually win somehow, and you don't feel great about it afterward, but you feel better with the 1 in the loss column than the 2 in the loss column. So that's where I'm looking at the offense. It's just Nate, there's a big word here, and I can't really think of how that's going to come together. But yeah, offense was not the problem this weekend, but also it's still not a problem. If that makes
it
sense.
wasn't the solution,
It
right?
wasn't the solution. Yeah, there you go.
It was
not a problem. It's great.
It was both. It was both. A couple of things that somehow is being glossed over because UCLA didn't get any points out of it. But Luke Reynolds fumbling on the second play of the second half was as close to disaster as you could have. Very clearly, the end of the first half. I'm not gonna Zapruder film the play calling, the execution, all of that stuff at the end of the first half. They were running the 4-minute offense. That's what they were trying to do.
I do want to have that conversation though.
Stop
because
it, please.
I think that, well, here's the thing. This is my point, and this is the only one I want to make. Time is an element here, but yardage is also an element. And that was my biggest problem is you start by trying to drain time. And the threat here is everyone's got their timeouts. Both teams have all 3 timeouts. You need to get as many yards as possible to get them out of field goal range or out of reasonable field goal range if you don't convert that first down. They focused on time over the other elements in the situation, and I think not the maximalist position of let's go get a touchdown, priority 1, instead of, and I understand, I agree with do not put this defense on the field. Absolutely. Correct. But to say that time was the only factor is, I think, ignoring what was the reality, which was you didn't get a first down, and so now you have to force it on 4th down to get them out of range or punt or field goal, and you don't want to then come off as we're playing scared or safe down, 17 points at that point? And so you're kind of putting yourself in that situation. You're boxing yourself into having fewer options with not being aggressive to start that 2-minute sequence. So that's my view of that particular conversation.
Are 3 Penn State points and no UCLA points with getting the ball back to start the second half an acceptable outcome?
Except it is the bare minimum. Yes. It is the bare minimum when you have the ball 2 minutes at your 44-yard line or whatever it is. 3 points are the bare minimum of acceptable when you get that again.
They started with it at their 25, so they span the field, right?
I'm saying at the 2-minute timeout. So yeah. the start of that drive, that's not where I'm talking about in terms of the decision making. Everything before that was fine. It's when the 2-minute timeout happened.
Right. I really don't. I just don't have that big of an issue with the thinking. Like, of all the priorities there, getting points is absolutely one in any capacity. And 1A has to be not allowing the defense back on the field. Like, it was that bad defensively for Penn State in terms of knowing what they were doing and being able to. UCLA got the evidence is right there. They got points every time they touched the ball in the first half, every single time. So that, I don't. That doesn't compute with me as to why that wouldn't be right there in terms of what your priorities are. Did they mess it up? Absolutely. Absolutely. Right? Once you get to 3rd and 4, 4th and 2, you've got to be able to move the chains to at least put yourself into field goal range, at which point you call the timeouts and then you go, right? Because again, 30 seconds to go 30 yards is not unreasonable for a touchdown or a field goal, right? That with 3 timeouts specifically. That's neither here nor there. They only had the ball 3 times in the first half. Like, you can't. Yeah. It's not winning football. It's not winning football. They're like putting yourself in a 10-0 hole before you touch the ball is bad football. It's not winning football. And then in the second half, when Penn State's offense did have the ball and capitalized on it, somewhat, the defense let them down, right? Like anytime there was that critical moment of, oh, it's within one score, or a big break happens with the punt block, it was a letdown on the other side of it. And again, that complimentary word is such a big piece of that, right? Is you come out in the second half and you got to do something, and your offense jacks the ball up. Like that's just not.
On a 20-yard pass, by the way, on a play that was incredibly positive until he gives the ball up. Like they moved the ball at will. I almost called him Drew Clifford because of the way the game played out. But Drew Aller played a good game of football. Completed 80% of his passes. So Nate, I know you got to get going here. So any final thoughts you want to get out here before you have to get going? Or do you have to get going now? You just told me a time, and I wanted to honor that.
No, I could. No, I mean, I'd still got 4 minutes.
Okay.
Again, like I'm. If you really break it down, because of the way the defense was playing, there were minimal opportunities for mistakes, and the reality was, both sides did that, right?
Yeah.
Like both sides of the ball, all three, every phase. Like Justin Lustig is an enemy right now because of that onside kick. Absolutely. But also his unit produced a blocked punt for a touchdown. The defense got gashed in a lot of ways, but also had a fourth down stop in the fourth quarter when they desperately needed to get the ball back. Like there were good things that every piece and every phase of Penn State did, but there were also critical backbreaking pieces. Like it's impossible for me to separate all of those and do what everybody wants to do, including myself, which is just like, well, this part stunk. Did they stink? In some capacities on offense, some capacities on defense, and some capacities on special teams? Absolutely. That can't you cannot play like that and expect to win games against anybody that you play. And it has been a consistent theme through this season in all three phases.
Yeah. The pressure to score on all three possessions is a lot. Fitz, give me some thoughts here while apparently my battery ran out. So give me some thoughts here.
My first thought is Jack had the best comment in the chat when he asked Nate why he was broadcasting from a Pottery Barn. I audibly gasped at that one. That was fantastic. My thought is just offensive execution. How much of this is being preoccupied? And I'm a big down and distance guy myself, but being preoccupied with how much that's going to happen. I mean, how many third and, we talked the week before about Oregon putting themselves in position to gain fourth downs by turning 3rd and 8 into 4th and 1. How many times do we see Penn State in 3rd and 1 this week? And how much emphasis is being paid to those sticks? How much emphasis is being paid to running the offense to get a little bit at a time and spread yourself out there and put together these big drives? And, we know they want to have explosive plays, but the attempt for explosive plays is few and far between is what we're seeing. So I think that is probably sort of the stagnation that you see there is being so, I don't want to say predetermined, but being so predetermined with what situation you're going to put yourself in from a down and distance situation. And you're getting fractional.
Are you saying they're going into a shell? Is that what you're saying on offense? Is they're trying so hard to stay on the field that they're just not playing like football?
The goal is to get the 11th yard, get that. And whereas, you saw Oregon, even on 4th down, Oregon was not limiting themselves to running the ball to get the 11th yard, which is, going to get you a first down is great, but like picking up a big play, picking up and those are 4th downs. They're not even 3rd down. So you're putting yourself in a situation where you're saying, yes, we want to avoid 3rd and 8 because they're not a very good 3rd and 8 team at all. But you're also putting yourself in a situation where, hey, you can pick up that first down on 2nd down. It goes a long way in extending that drive. I mean, it's just, it's honest to God. It's 1st down, 2nd down, 3rd down, and then pins and needles. And this offense does not operate well on pins and needles because it's afraid to make a mistake.
Yeah. And I think that's a big part of it is the from the quarterback, and the biggest criticism I have of Drew Aller is the the reticence to make a mistake and the conservative nature at times when there are opportunities to then be right by the coaching instead of like letting it rip and playing football. But there were in this game, I noted a discerned effort, a concerted effort to get Drew in rhythm, quicker passing. Teams have been taking away some of those windows down the field, so they were attacking those zones underneath to allow Aller to throw some balls and get some of that confidence to then let it rip later, which we did see in the third quarter. But it's impossible, and Nate isn't here to have the conversation of Katron and Nick and all that stuff. But if you only have 3 possessions in the first half, one of them's at the 2-minute warning, a 4-minute offense, you don't have enough reps to get those guys the ball. And if Nick Singleton is your passing down back, and that's very clear by the evidence of when he's on the field, then you're naturally not going to have as many carries for Katron Allen. But when you get into these situations of trying to establish the offense, establish these threats, establish, as your point, you're not actually then going to play football. You're going to establish things and not take things from the defense, it seems. Offensively, on a game where they scored 30 points, it feels like it's still an issue for them to be effective in the moment.
Yeah, and I think there's too much side to side. This is an East-West offense that is not functioning in the sense that, hey, if you can get around the edge, it's there, but you're not right now. You're not getting there. So I think that comes down, and it all came to a head on that 4th and 2 at the end of the game. Is okay, yep. I can see the vision, but like I could see the vision for 4th and 5 a lot better than I could see the vision for that one, especially based on how UCLA played that and what are your options coming across the formation. That one. If you want. Go ahead.
The way that James Franklin described it post game is that, and my interpretation of watching the film is they really want Pena to have the ball in his hands there, where that it wasn't necessarily like the quarterback has the option, but they were trying to, as he said, split the defense, get the ball to Pena on the outside. So essentially, they zero blitz up the middle, and then you run around it, and suddenly you get a touchdown, an easy walk-in touchdown. But if there's an option on the play, that means there's 2 potential outcomes, and UCLA forced them by the read to take the one they didn't want. And I guess like on top of all these other parts of the play call, I was thinking about that yesterday too, of like, just if you want to call that, just call the sweep or a pop pass or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking and Luke Reynolds is a bad example because Luke Reynolds is the guy that missed the block, but how many times have we seen them move? And this isn't even a Warren thing. This goes back to Theo. This goes back to the guy, Brenton Strange, before him, moving a tight end across the formation, hitting him in the flat and picking up an easy 3 yards. I mean, I could have, if I could have put money down on what they were going to do on that 4th down, that's what I would have put. And I would have lost a lot of money. And I think a lot of people did as well this weekend. I don't mean to chuckle when I say that, but it was just that hilariously bad when you're looking at the way that they functioned and executed from the booth down. I mean, that is everywhere.
Do we get to your thoughts here on the defense? I know you got some conversation points here. The linebackers, I like the way you phrase this, just a piece of the problem, but it seems like there's more. I've talked now and written about, like, I don't think the defensive line necessarily fits with what they're trying to do up front. It's been a concern for a while, even during the non-conference season, but it seems to be really manifesting itself once they have to go to the bench, which they were unwilling to do during the Oregon game. Do you share those concerns? Is that what you're talking about when it's just went up, kind of like more than just the linebackers here?
Yeah, I think it's more. I mean, the linebackers are the most visible piece because we could see Nico weaving in and out, and Dom DeLuca missing him, and Amari Campbell missing him, and Campbell's misses look better because he's going faster, but it's still concerning the tackling just all over. You mentioned that early in the show, but yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with the way that they're playing defense and the way that they're built to handle this defense. There's no Tyleek Williams in the middle there. You thought Alonzo Ford could be the hold 'em up guy, and it's turned out that hey, double teaming Zane Durant basically on every play is a good formula for opposing offensive coordinators to find. And he's being used in a manner that he was not used when he was making those plays in the backfield and very active and things like that. Now they did, and that's probably the frustrating thing. They did have some flashes, those back-to-back sacks that they had, I believe, in the third quarter. That those kind of things are the peak of what you should expect from a Noles defense, but you're getting those way too few and far between. And I think that's, kind of when you miss those, it looks bad. Like when you miss those, you leave yourself vulnerable. And I think that's really, difficult to come through. I mean, they did go to the portal for linebacker. Yeah. They got Amari Campbell, and I'm not.
Can I just read this out here for the podcast audience? Cypher Carbon says, if Noles didn't like the linebackers, why didn't they go back into the portal? Well, first off, Noles was hired after the first transfer portal
There's
window.
A really good article right now on Blue White Illustrated on this, by the way. The writer is very handsome as well. So check that out.
Salt and pepper.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Fatherhood a little bit. No, you're looking at a situation. So they brought in Kendall Daniels from Oklahoma State, and this was when Tom Allen was still there. He would have been a Sam, but you could have made that work with him in the box. And then they, after that, they did not get him. There was the coaching change where you switch to a 4-2-5. So you need fewer linebackers, which is good because they don't have a ton to begin with. But you also have misfits in terms of athleticism, in terms of body type and things like that. Because, I think Kari Nelson's not a box linebacker. Keon Wiley, it appears, is not a box linebacker. So you've got those situations there. And then all of a sudden, after the spring, Tamir was a surprise. They expected to have Tamir as third or fourth guy, whatever. But I still think they would have, because of the circumstances of Amari Campbell, they still would have gotten him or brought him in because he was close with Rojas, and Rojas carries a lot of weight here. He says he would go to James Franklin and say, hey, got to get this guy. And it would make sense from that standpoint. But they've been thin since the spring. They also went after Mohamed Toure from Rutgers, a couple other names that popped up on the radar, but those two were the main ones. And they would have taken both if they could have gotten them. But I don't think that was in the number one budget because Toure went to Miami, and then number two, just because of fit, it kind of torpedoes some of that stuff. So I think that, yes, they did go to the portal, but injuries, long-term injuries, there's no rationalizing those long-term injuries. So if you still had Rojas on the field, you probably win the game against UCLA. It doesn't matter. It's a complete hypothetical, but you're in a much better situation when you lop off the top of the position, which in my eyes was Tony. When you would lop off Denai, Zane, Tony, AJ, or Zaki, like huge changes have to come after that. And they weren't prepared for that.
Yeah. And to kind of the larger point of talented players that are young right now, not ready to play, not to say that Penn State doesn't have talent, but if you have these gaps in recruiting, you have some misses over years, this is where those show up, and even just some miscalculations, guys you lose to the portal, missed evaluations. Every team has pain points. Every team has these stress factors that turn into stress fractures if you get the wrong injuries.
That'd be such a bar if you were able to pull it off. But
I know.
You did not, so
I know it was so good. I was
You're
like, I was too excited.
To, Missouri, Alabama again. So
yeah, right. Well, it's here this weekend, right? I'm not wrong about that. It's actually here.
Yes, it is here.
Okay, fantastic. Well, before I flub anything else, Fitz, any final thoughts here? What's coming up for you this week at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com?
I just wrapped up that linebacker piece, which took. I wanted to get up late yesterday. It took way too long for me to get that up. But yeah, continued coverage. Not really worried about press conferences and stuff like that because everybody has already made up their mind about those. But other than that, no. I mean, we got a lot to talk about. Going to dive deeper. Ryan is back from his weekend of wedding debauchery, so hopefully we got some more recruiting to talk about on Thursday. And can't wait to do it with you guys. Appreciate the activity in the chat. A lot of people, very opinionated. Some a little bit too much, but we appreciate everybody for coming by. A reminder to like and subscribe to the video. It really helps us out a lot. And hopefully our therapy session was good for you guys as well.
Yeah, we'll be doing it again tomorrow, 10 a.m. I want to give a reminder, trying to do this earlier in the week, 12:30 for the tailgate show outside the Bryce Jordan Center ticket office right on Curtin Road, just down from Beaver Stadium. You can come see us. We'll have our tailgate show, 90 minutes starting at 12:30, where we preview Northwestern and Penn State. Somebody asked in the chat, is Northwestern going to be able to run all over Penn State like the last two teams? Well, we'll find out. We'll be talking about that a little bit more tomorrow and as the week plays on. So for Nate Bauer, who's out doing some work now, and for Sean Fitz, I'm Thomas Frank Carr. We'll talk to you tomorrow.